have updates about the American military's efforts to develop the best military tech, as tests are ongoing on the Warthog A-10 jet, which comprises 60% of the radioactivity in naturally occurring uranium. In 2014, General Mark Welsh III, the Chief of Staff, stated that the U.S. Air Force would probably refrain from using Warthog A-10. This is because they intended to cut down on the military budget. The Chief of Staff claimed that the move would save the country about $3.7 billion in 5 years. Fast forward to the present arsenal, the Warthog A-10 is one of the deadliest weapons to ever exist. By the end of this video, you'll see why. However, before we get into the details, ensure to like this video and subscribe to the channel Military Technology Updates. What the A-10 Warthogs were capable of. Whoever thought the US was done with A-10s was making a huge mistake. Now the jet got a new cockpit, overhaul tactics, and a layout to push it to the league of dangerous weapons on the planet. This devastating weapon was designed to tear down Soviet tanks across northern Europe with little stress. It was built with many similarities to the General Electric GAU-8 with multiple barrels. Those barrels on their own can deliver destructive punishment to any armor. However, it's now enhanced to shoot uranium bullets, which would be catastrophic for any US adversary. In addition, the A-10's 11 hard points that used to carry iron bombs and rockets have upgraded over the years, and there's so much damage it can do. In 1991, during the Desert Storm operation, the jet carved a fearsome reputation. It's been modified to keep up with the standards of modern warfare. This made it weird when the Chief of Staff talked about ending its production and use. The American Air Force even made revelations that the F-38 Lightning II was a better weapon for combatants than the A-10. Did US Air Force intend to quit the use of Warthog? The world was made to believe that since the Afghanistan war was over, they said the services of professionals specializing in close air support weren't needed anymore. However, Congress comprised staunch A-10 supporters who refused to pass the proposal. Their grounds were that such a move would negatively affect its Air Force. They also stated that the team's ability to cover specific missions might require a fly-off to confirm that F-35s were better than A-10s. Considering the usefulness of the Warthogs during the 2014 operation that involved sending the theater security package to Kuwait, supporting to dump the jets would be tiny. As the Air Force moved from Kuwait to Afghanistan, these jets were crucial for covering the military withdrawal. A-10 Warthogs were almost regularly included in combat missions, further underscoring the machine's usefulness to the senior leaders. The Uranium Bullets upgrade and its effect. The Uranium Bullets were all the rage back in the days of its discovery because of the damage it was capable of. These silver bullets would penetrate enemy tanks no matter how hard the thick steel encasing was. It was also used as armor to protect its users from enemy attacks. So it works twofold, but unfortunately, so was its effect. While it was good during combat operations, it wasn't good for the health of combatants as they soon developed leukemia. During its earlier uses in the Gulf War and the bombing of Kosovo and Yugoslavia by the Allied nations, depleted uranium was among the best weapons. The silver bullet quite honestly helped solve most of the military's problem. The first experimentation on uranium bullets was back in the 1970s. Why have these bullets stayed in military's men's mind all these years? First, uranium is 2 times the density of lead, which means it boasted of a heavy punch as ammunition. As stated earlier, it can penetrate many heavy armor vehicles. Then again, uranium shells burn off at the edges, producing a self-sharpening effect that enables them to bore holes into enemy armor. Even with all these advantages, the fact that it left soldiers sick with leukemia meant that it couldn't be used. However, with the A-10 Warthogs, its users would rarely have any reason to touch it. It would just leave the A-10 barrels pumping out bullets and leaving armored tanks dilapidated in its wake. What other upgrades have been made to the aircraft? The idea to cut out A-10s had backfired as there was a renewed impetus to modify the jets with mission-critical enhancements. As a result, loads of A-10 upgrades soon started in earnest. Warthog jets now featured LARS, short for Lightweight Airborne Recovery System. V-12 was also installed on all A-10 jets in service for the Reserve Command or the Air National Guard. It enables pilots to easily communicate with on-ground personnel, including pararescuemen and downed pilots. The feature would be integral to the A-10 new Central Interface Control Unit. This unit would be concerned with providing critical information on combat search and rescue, otherwise known as SAR. As multiple upgrades have been made, there have been active duty tests performed by the Test and Evaluation Squadron. And as tests continue to show the devastating capabilities of the Warthogs, more military departments are tapping into it. As of the last count, the Air Force had over 280 Warthog A-10s. Interestingly, efforts to reduce the fleet have failed. With the new firepower offered by the A-10 jets, one particular common fleet initiative is working to ensure that the jets are still in service by 2035. A significant upgrade feature for this aircraft is the necessity of maintaining survival in a contested environment. This means that Warthog pilots now have more features to help them evade threats using standoff weapons. The standoff weapons, typically longer range, are combined with updated military tactics for effectiveness. Now, it's worth noting that survivability is not only about weapon and software upgrades by military standards. It concerns going into combat with the assurance your tactics are lethal and up to date. And according to US military personnel, they have an organization that does all that. The A-10 Warthogs now can send weapons to multiple targets with the push of just a button on one press. Before the new upgrades, doing that was possible, but it placed a ton of workload on the pilot's shoulders. Using the 2,000-pound class BGU or the 500-pound class GBU, features can inform A-10 pilots if they can clearly hit multiple intended targets simultaneously. That way, it does all the calculations and settings for you. Did I also mention that A-10 pilots now wear high-tech helmets? The helmet's referred to as a hybrid optical base inertial tracker, aka Hobbit. This new helmet can accurately track a pilot's head movements to provide comfort and accuracy when necessary. What's the barrel design like? Anyone who's ever seen, or better yet, handled the GAU-8 gun will admit that it's an excellent gun. Firstly, the gun has 7 independent barrels that come with rotary locking bolts. The rotary locking bolts are mechanically actuated for good mechanics. The equipment gets its drive from a pair of hydraulic motors, which provide the force the gun needs to fire 4,200 tank-destroying, depleted uranium bullets within a minute. As you might expect for a weapon that was constructed in the 1960s, it was built as a part of a response to the threat posed by the massive Soviet army. The Soviets seemed to be closing in on Western Europe at the time, and it was necessary to possess an aircraft capable of doing a lot of damage. So, whether it was battle tanks or weapon carriers, or even armored personnel carriers, the US just needed something like the A-10s in its arsenal. With time came ideas for modification and keeping the requirements of certain modern war conditions. One proposal called for the design of a 30mm rotary autocannon. It would have a firing rate of 4,000 rounds in under 60 seconds. 2 competing gun designs were selected from General Electric and Philco Ford. The first was responsible for the development of the earlier M61 Falcon, while the second attempt to build the 25mm GAU-7. As was expected, General Electric won the contract, and the Air Force designated the gun as GAU-8. The General Electric manufacturers went above and beyond its 20mm M61 Falcon. Instead, it developed a new and less weight weapon system in conjunction with the linkless ammo feed of the Falcon. The result? One of the most deadly weapons tested in the 21st century. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Military Technology Updates. Let's get back to the video. What's the design for the jet? The US Air Force had to pick an aircraft design from 2 designers to house the new gun. The 2 designers were Northrop's YA-9 and YA-10 from Fairchild Republic. The 2 companies used the GAU-8 as the focal point in the construction process. Fairchild mounted its cannon, YA-10, slightly to port. This had the firing barrel indexed around the side of the starboard, positioned at 9 o'clock. With such placement, the gun's recoil force of 45 kilonewtons would rest along the jet's center line. This would mean that the A-10 Warthog couldn't be easily pushed off target while firing. Soon, recoil adapters were used to mitigate the recoil amount that was transferred to the aircraft's airframe. Tests for both designs ran from 1972 to early 1973, when the US Air Force chose to go with the YA-10 design. Their design meant that the Warthog jets were durable and sturdy aircraft that wouldn't need a lot of maintenance. It also meant that the plane could operate from forwarding bases even without extensive support. The Fairchild organization built the jet to meet the standards of the highest survivability requirements at the time. The airframe is strong enough to withstand a cannon fire of about 23 millimeters. Its armored cockpit has the capacity to hold its own 57 millimeter rounds. Also, the Warthog's fuel tanks are self-sealing to curb wastage and promote durability. And then, this is an aircraft that can be flown in what is known as manual reversion mode. This has also been tested to be effective when the avionics or the hydraulics are damaged. You might also want to note that the GAU-8 gun alone weighs over 600 pounds, while the entire gun system is over 4,000 pounds in weight. If you put that together, then the gun power on the Warthog jet accounts for as much as 16% of the plane's total weight. How deadly is the Warthog A-10 jet actually? In the early days of its invention, ground crews of the A-10 would replenish its magazine manually. To reload the whole thing, it could take hours, but now the automated loading system was developed. The company that won the contract is known as Colony Engineering. They did it with a design that allowed combatants to load up fresh ammo while removing spent cases simultaneously. So, with the automatic loading done on a weapon system with 7 barrels, each firing 557 rounds every minute, you can imagine what facing this aircraft would be like. These are Ukrainian bullets that can bore holes into armored tanks and enemy blockades, not to mention the aircraft's speed thanks to its relative weightlessness. By all standards and for all survivability purposes, very few military aircraft anywhere in the world can wreak havoc like the A-10. It's what it takes to adapt to high altitudes, its design offers good maneuverability, and its armament is just plain deadly. So hearing about the US Army testing out such a weapon is it's more bad news for Russia and China in their quest for military superiority. If you enjoy watching videos like this, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel Military Technology Updates. That way you don't miss out on our next videos.